Ranger Lead, this is command. You are green to proceed with briefing. Over. I adjusted my headset. The familiar static crackle a backdrop to every mission. Roger that, command. Ranger Lead, out. I glanced around the dimly lit briefing room at Fort Bragg, where my team, the best the 75th Ranger Regiment had to offer, waited attentively. All right, listen up, I began, my voice steady. The projector lit up, displaying aerial images of a dense, forested area circled in red. This is our AO, Area of Operation. It's a quarantine zone up in the Appalachians. Intel's sketchy, but something's off the grid there, and it's our job to find out what. Sergeant First Class Ramirez, our team sniper, raised an eyebrow. Quarantine zone, sir? Are we talking chemical, biological, or some new kind of fun? Unknown, Ramirez. That's part of what we need to find out. I clicked to the next slide, showing satellite images of a decaying infrastructure within the zone. We've got abandoned facilities, possible underground bunkers. Civvy sightings have been nil, but recon drones picked up heat sigs. Staff Sergeant Lee, the team's communications specialist, piped up. Comms are going to be spotty in that terrain, Captain. I'll set us up with SATCOM and short-range UHF for intra-team. Good call, Lee. Keep it tight and encrypted. I turned to Sergeant Brooks, our medic. Brooks, prep your kit for NBC contingencies, nuclear, biological, chemical. Brooks nodded, her expression grim. Will do, Cap. Hope it's a false alarm, though. Corporal Davis, the team breacher and explosives expert, cracked his knuckles. What's the ROE, Captain? Rules of engagement are tight, I replied. We're ghosts in there. Engage only if there's a direct threat to the team. Our primary goal is recon and intel gathering. We go in light and fast, standard loadout. M4S for the team, M2010 ESR for Ramirez. Sidearms are M9s, standard frags, smokes, and flashbangs. I clicked the remote, bringing up a topographic map. We'll insert via MH-60 Blackhawks, fast rope in, and establish a forward operating base. Here. I pointed at a clearing near the edge of the zone. 2 clicks from our primary area of interest. Davis smirked. Sounds like a walk in the park, Cap. Yeah, a freaking haunted park, Ramirez muttered, half joking. All right, that's it for now. Gear up and meet at the hangar in 0500. Dismissed. As the team filed out, I caught the determined looks in their eyes. They were ready, as always. I grabbed my own gear, the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. This op was different. I could feel it in my bones. We were stepping into the unknown, and I had to bring my team back safe. I looked at the satellite image again, the red circle ominously marking our destination. The quarantine zone was a puzzle, a shadow on the map. And we were about to step right into it. The chill of the early morning air hit me as I stepped out of the barracks, my boots crunching on the gravel. It was still dark, the sky tinged with the faintest hint of dawn. Our MH-60 Blackhawk helicopters were waiting on the tarmac, their rotors slowly beginning to spin. I saw my team assembled, each member going through their pre-mission rituals. Ramirez was methodically checking his M2010 enhanced sniper rifle, a deadly piece of precision engineering. Lee was busy syncing the SATCOM and checking the UHF frequencies. Brooks, with her medic bag, was double-checking her supplies, bandages, tourniquets, and vials of atropine for chemical threats. Davis was inspecting his breaching tools and demolition gear, ensuring everything was compact and easily accessible. "Morning, Captain," Brooks greeted me, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of anticipation. "Morning, Brooks. Everyone's green?" I asked, scanning the rest of the team. "All set here, Cap. Just waiting on your word," Lee replied, giving me a thumbs up. I nodded, feeling the familiar pre-mission tension that never quite goes away, no matter how many operations you've been on. All right, let's mount up. Time to see what this quarantine zone's got in store for us. We approached the idling Blackhawks, the thump of the rotors now a rhythmic beat that you felt in your chest. The flight crew gave us a brief nod as we boarded, each of us slipping into our roles with practiced ease. I sat next to the pilot, Captain Harris, a seasoned aviator with tours in both Afghanistan and Iraq under his belt. "Morning, Captain. Ready for a little trip to the unknown," Harris joked, his hands expertly adjusting the controls. "Just another day at the office, Harris," I replied, strapping myself in. The Black Hawk lifted smoothly, joining its twin in a synchronized ascent. Below us, the base receded into a patchwork of lights as we headed towards the Appalachians. As dawn broke, the quarantine zone came into view, a sprawling expanse of forested terrain, eerily silent and seemingly untouched. But we knew better. The lack of any signs of life was unnerving, an invisible shroud hanging over the area. "We're approaching the LZ, Captain." Harris's voice crackled over the headset. "Looks quiet, but that doesn't mean much." "Understood, Harris. Keep your eyes peeled," I responded, gripping my M4 carbine a little tighter. The Black Hawks descended toward the clearing designated for our FOB. The pilots executed the landing with precision, the rotors whipping the air into a frenzy as we disembarked. "Ranger Lead, this is Command. Confirm LZ secure. Over." I surveyed the perimeter as the team fanned out, securing the area. "Command, this is Ranger Lead. LZ is secure. Proceeding with FOB setup. Over." "Copy that, Ranger Lead. Establish your FOB and begin recon. Maintain radio silence unless necessary. Command out." We quickly set up our FOB, a minimalist arrangement of tents and essential equipment. Every action was efficient, each of us aware of the importance of speed. In a zone like this, complacency could be deadly. "Perimeter's clear, Cap," Davis reported, his eyes scanning the tree line. "No movement, nothing." "Good. Keep a watch. We don't know what we're dealing with yet," I instructed, looking out into the dense forest. Ramirez approached, his sniper rifle slung over his shoulder. "Got a good vantage point for Overwatch, Cap? If anything so much as twitches out there, I'll see it." I nodded. "All right, Ramirez. Set up your position. Lee, establish a comm link with Command. Brooks, prep your med station. Davis, you're with me. We're going to scout the immediate vicinity." "Roger that, Cap," they chorused, each moving to carry out their tasks. As Davis and I ventured into the tree line, the silence of the quarantine zone enveloped us. It was a heavy, oppressive silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl. I signaled Davis to hold position as I scanned the area with my binoculars. "Something's not right about this place, Davis," I murmured, the unease growing in my gut. "Yeah, feels like we're being watched," he replied quietly, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. We pushed forward cautiously, every sense heightened. The quarantine zone was a mystery, a riddle wrapped in an enigma, and we were just beginning to peel back the layers. The dense forest canopy filtered the morning light into a murky twilight, casting long shadows that twisted and turned with our every step. Davis and I moved in a tactical, staggered formation, our boots treading softly on the forest floor laden with decaying leaves. "Cap, movement at 2 o'clock, Davis whispered, his hand signaling a halt. I froze, squinting through the trees. There it was again, a fleeting shadow, too agile and silent to be any ordinary forest creature. I signaled Davis to flank left as I moved right, trying to encircle whatever it was we were tracking. The forest seemed to hold its breath as we closed in. Then, without warning, a figure darted out from behind a tree. It was humanoid, but moved with an unnatural, jerking gait. Its skin, what little I could see, appeared mottled and discolored. "Contact," I hissed into my comms, keeping my M4 raised and trained on the figure. Unknown entity, possibly hostile. "Copy. Hold position. Assess and engage if necessary," came the crackled response from command. The figure stopped abruptly, its head snapping towards us. Its face was obscured, but I could feel its gaze, piercing and intense. For a moment, we stood there, locked in a silent standoff. Then it bolted with inhuman speed. "Damn it," I cursed under my breath. "Davis, on me. Let's move." We gave chase, but it was like tracking a ghost. The creature moved through the dense foliage with ease, barely making a sound. It was leading us deeper into the quarantine zone, away from the safety of our FOB. "Cap, we should pull back," Davis suggested, his voice tense. "We're getting stretched thin." He was right. Pursuing further could be a tactical error, especially with unknown variables at play. I called off the chase, and we began our cautious retreat back, all the while feeling the unseen eyes of the forest on us. Back at camp, the team was on high alert. Ramirez was perched in his overwatch position, scanning the tree lines with his sniper scope. Lee was tinkering with the comms equipment, trying to boost our signal through the dense canopy. "Report," I said, approaching the group. "Encountered an unknown entity," I briefed them. "Humanoid, fast and elusive. Could be what we're here for, or it could be a local, gone feral." "Didn't engage?" Brooks queried, checking her medical supplies. "No shots fired. We need more intel before we can confront whatever that was." The team nodded in understanding. This was uncharted territory, both literally and figuratively. "All right, we maintain a defensive posture. No one goes out alone. Ramirez, keep your eyes peeled for anything out of the ordinary. Lee, any luck with the comms?" "Some, but it's patchy at best out here," Lee replied, adjusting a satellite antenna. "I've set up a repeating signal booster. Should keep us in touch with command, but it's not foolproof." "Good work. Keep at it," I commended him. The rest of the day passed with a tense undercurrent. We fortified our position, set up tripwires, and improvised alarms around the perimeter. As dusk fell, the forest grew eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a held breath before a storm. That night, as we huddled around a small concealed fire, the weight of our mission settled heavily on us. We were trained for combat, for conflict, but this was different. This was a shadow war, against an enemy we didn't yet understand, in a place that felt like another world. "Stay sharp, stay alive," I reminded the team as we prepared for the first watch rotation. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet, but we'll figure it out. We always do." But as I settled into my own watch, the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach grew. We were in the heart of the unknown, and the unknown was watching us, waiting. The quarantine zone had more secrets to reveal, and I had a feeling they wouldn't be pleasant. The dawn broke with a muted gray light filtering through the dense canopy, casting a gloomy pall. We had passed the night in uneasy shifts, the forest eerily silent except for the occasional rustle that set every nerve on edge. "Morning, Cap," Brooks greeted me, her eyes betraying the same restless night we all endured. "Coffee's on, if you can call it that." "Thanks, Brooks," I replied, accepting the steaming cup. The bitter brew was a small comfort against the chill of the morning. Our mission for the day was reconnaissance. We needed to gather intel, anything that could shed light on the nature of the quarantine zone. I briefed the team after a quick breakfast of MREs. "Listen up," I started, checking my gear one last time. "We're moving out in 2 teams. Ramirez, you're on Overwatch. Lee, you're with me. Brooks, Davis, you're Team 2. We're doing a sweep of the village marked on the satellite images. Eyes open for anything out of the ordinary." "What's the play if we run into our speedy friend from yesterday?" Davis asked, his hand subconsciously patting the pistol at his side. "Observe and report. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary," I reiterated firmly. "This op is intel, not combat. Clear?" "Crystal, Cap," came the unified response. We set out, moving cautiously through the underbrush. The village wasn't far, but in this terrain, every step felt laborious. The place was eerily quiet, not even the sound of birds. As we approached the village, the first thing that struck me was the sense of abrupt abandonment. Cars parked askew in the driveways, doors ajar, windows broken. Nature was reclaiming the place, vines creeping over the faded paint and cracked sidewalks. "Holy hell," Lee whispered, surveying the scene. "It's like they vanished mid-life." I nodded, signaling for him to cover me as I approached the nearest house. The door creaked ominously as I pushed it open. Inside, the scene was one of chaotic normalcy. A half-eaten meal on the table, a TV guide open on the couch, a child's toy on the floor. "Cap, over here!" Brooks called from a few houses down. I hurried over, Lee on my six. Brooks was standing over a strange symbol drawn on the ground, a mix of geometric shapes and what looked like letters, but not in any language I recognized. "What the fuck is that?" Davis asked, his eyes wide. "No idea," I replied. "Photograph it. Could be important." We continued our sweep, finding more symbols, more scenes of life interrupted. It was unsettling, like walking through a ghost town. "Ranger lead, this is Overwatch. Movement in your vicinity." "Over," Ramirez's voice crackled through the comms. "Copy. Overwatch. Direction?" I responded, my hand instinctively going to my rifle. "Northeast of your position. Fast, erratic movement. Could be our friend. Over." "Understood. We're pulling back. Keep eyes on. Out." I signaled the team, and we began our tactical retreat. The feeling of being watched returned, stronger than before. As we neared the edge of the village, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. It was human, filled with pain and terror. "Fuck," Davis cursed. "That came from the north." "We need to check it out," I said, the decision weighing heavily. "Brooks, Davis, on me. Lee, call it in. Ramirez, cover us." We moved towards the scream, our formation tight. As we rounded a corner, we came upon a scene that will haunt me forever. A man, or what was left of him, was pinned against a tree, his body impaled by what looked like organic spikes that had erupted from the ground. "Jesus Christ," Brooks muttered, her face pale. "Stay alert," I warned, examining the area for threats. The spikes seemed to have come from the earth itself, an organic trap of terrifying efficiency. "Cap, look at this," Davis said, pointing to a nearby tree. Carved into the bark was another symbol, similar to the ones we found in the village. "We need to get this back to command," I said, taking photos with my camera. "Let's move out." We returned, the weight of our discoveries heavy on our shoulders. The quarantine zone was more than just a no man's land. It was active, hostile, and we were in the thick of it. "Ranger lead, this is command. We've received your intel. Stand by for further orders. Over." "Roger, command. Ranger lead, out." I looked at my team, their faces grim but resolute. We were in uncharted territory, facing an enemy unlike any we had encountered before. But we were Rangers. We would adapt, overcome, and if necessary, fight our way out. The quarantine zone's secrets were slowly unraveling, and we were the ones pulling the strings. Dusk was creeping over the dense forest, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple as we continued our patrol deeper into the quarantine zone. The weight of the day's discoveries pressed heavily on us, but we had a mission to complete. "Cap, I've got something," Davis said, his voice tense. We had been following a faint trail, more out of instinct than clear evidence. I signaled for a halt and moved to where Davis crouched. He was pointing at a set of footprints, partially obscured by the undergrowth, but unmistakably military. "Looks recent, maybe a day old," he observed. "We're not alone here," I murmured, a mix of apprehension and resolve settling in. "Let's see where this leads." The trail meandered through the thick forest, winding between gnarled trees and overgrown brush. The air was heavy with the scent of moist earth and decay. After about half a click, the trail opened into a small clearing. What we saw there stopped us in our tracks. A platoon's worth of soldiers, at least what remained of them, lay scattered across the clearing. Their uniforms were torn and stained, their gear discarded haphazardly. Some were slumped against trees. Others lay on the ground as if they had simply given up. "Holy shit," Brooks whispered, her hand going to her mouth. I approached the nearest soldier, a young corporal by the look of his patch. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. There was no visible wound, but his expression was frozen in a rictus of terror. "Check for survivors," I ordered, my voice barely above a whisper. We moved through the clearing, but it was quickly apparent there were no survivors. These men hadn't been killed by conventional means. There were no bullet wounds, no signs of a firefight. "Cap, over here," Lee called out. He was standing by a soldier who had a journal clutched in his rigid fingers. Gently prying the journal free, I flipped it open. The last entry was dated 2 days ago. The handwriting was shaky, almost illegible, but the message was clear. They're in the trees, watching us, whispering. We can't sleep, can't rest. Johnson went mad, shot himself. We're not alone here. God help us. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I read the entry aloud. We need to report this, I said, looking at my team. Their faces were grim, eyes reflecting the horror of the scene. Ranger Lead, this is Command. Report your status. Over. Command, this is Ranger Lead. We've discovered a lost platoon. No survivors. It looks like they were scared to death. We found a journal. I'll send photos. Over. Copy, Ranger Lead. That's troubling. Maintain your position. We're sending a QRF to your location for extraction. Over. Roger, Command. We'll hold position. Over and out. As night fell, we set up a defensive perimeter around the clearing. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the trees themselves had eyes. Ramirez was the first to break the silence. Cap, you ever seen anything like this? I shook my head. Never. This is beyond anything in our training. We spent a tense night in the clearing. Every shadow a potential threat, every sound a cause for alarm. But the night passed uneventfully. And by the time the QRF arrived in the early hours of the morning, we were more than ready to leave. As the Blackhawks took off, lifting us away from the nightmare below, I looked down at the clearing one last time. The forest seemed to swallow it whole, erasing any trace of the horror that had occurred there. But the images were seared into my mind, a haunting reminder that some things are beyond our understanding, beyond our control. The quarantine zone had claimed its victims, and we had been powerless to stop it. The ride back to our temporary base was fraught with an uneasy silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts about the grim discovery in the clearing. The Black Hawk's rotors sliced through the air, an almost hypnotic sound that did little to ease the tension. Once we touched down, the QRF team quickly unloaded, moving with precision to secure the area. I stepped off the chopper, the cool night air a stark contrast to the cramped, heated cabin. Ranger Lead, debrief at 0600 hours. Rest until then. Command's voice crackled through my headset. Copy, Command. Ranger Lead out, I replied, feeling the weight of exhaustion in my bones. Back at our makeshift camp, the team dispersed wordlessly to their tents. I lingered outside for a moment, looking up at the night sky. The stars were bright, but their light felt cold, distant. I was about to turn in when I noticed something odd. A faint, whispering sound, like leaves rustling, but rhythmic, almost intentional. I shook my head, attributing it to fatigue, and headed to my tent. The debriefing was terse and to the point. Command was concerned about the psychological impact of the mission, but there was still work to be done. Your next objective is to investigate the underground facilities, the commanding officer instructed, his face grim on the satellite feed. Be cautious. We still don't have a clear picture of what's happening in that zone. We geared up, this time with additional provisions for an extended patrol. The underground facilities might offer some clues about the bizarre occurrences in the quarantine zone. Keep your heads on a swivel, I cautioned the team. We're going into the lion's den. The trek to the facilities was uneventful, but the forest felt different in the daylight. Shadows seemed to linger longer, and the usual sounds of wildlife were conspicuously absent. As we approached the coordinates, the ground sloped downward, leading to a large metal hatch partially concealed by overgrowth. The hatch was ajar, creaking ominously as we pried it fully open. Brooks, Davis, you're on 6. Lee, with me, I ordered, my voice echoing slightly in the open chamber below the hatch. We descended the metal ladder into the bowels of the earth, our flashlights piercing the darkness. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of mold and something else, something metallic and sharp. The facility was a labyrinth of corridors and rooms, each turn revealing more decay and abandonment, Papers littered the floors, equipment was left to rust, and everywhere, that same whispering sound echoed off the walls. "What the fuck is that noise?" Davis muttered, his flashlight beam darting around a corner. "Stay focused," I said, though I shared his unease. We came upon a large control room, banks of monitors and consoles covered in dust. In the center of the room was a table with a map of the quarantine zone, marked with various symbols and notes. "This might be what we're looking for," Lee said, photographing the documents. As we gathered the intel, the whispering sound grew louder, more insistent. It was as if the facility itself was speaking to us, a language we couldn't understand but felt deep in our bones. Suddenly, the ground shook, a low rumble that sent a shockwave through the facility. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling, and the lights flickered erratically. "Earthquake?" Brooks shouted over the din. "Could be. Let's move," I yelled back. We retraced our steps, moving quickly through the disorienting corridors. The rumbling intensified, and with it, the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of unintelligible voices. Just as we reached the ladder to the surface, a deep roar reverberated through the facility, shaking the very foundation. I looked back one last time, the beam of my flashlight catching a glimpse of something moving in the shadows, fast and fluid, like a nightmare given form. We emerged into the daylight, the forest seeming to breathe a sigh of relief as the hatch clanged shut behind us. We were safe for the moment, but the secrets of the quarantine zone were far from revealed. As we made our way back, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, hunted. The whispers might have been left behind in the depths of the facility, but their echoes lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder that some things are better left buried. The oppressive atmosphere of the dense forest seemed to tighten around us as we neared our secondary objective. With each step, the silence of the woods grew more profound, almost expectant. "Cap, we're coming up on the facility," Lee reported, his voice a low whisper over the comms. "Copy that," I responded, my senses on high alert. The intel pointed us to an abandoned research facility, its secrets long forgotten. But in this zone, nothing was ever truly abandoned. The facility loomed ahead, a monolithic structure swallowed by overgrowth. Its main entrance gaped open, a dark maw leading into unknown depths. "Brooks, Davis, take left flank. Lee, you're with me. Eyes sharp, fingers on triggers," I instructed. The familiar weight of my M4 carbine a comforting presence in my hands. We entered the facility, our boots echoing in the vast, empty halls. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of rust and mold. Our flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing a scene of chaos. Overturned furniture, shattered glass, and papers strewn about like the aftermath of a storm. "This place is a damn tomb," Davis muttered, scanning the shadows. Without warning, a loud clang echoed through the corridors, followed by a series of rapid footsteps. "Contact! Multiple hostiles inbound!" I yelled, the adrenaline surging. "Fall back to the entrance!" We spun around, only to find ourselves facing a group of figures emerging from the shadows. Their movements were erratic, almost feral, but it was their eyes that sent a chill down my spine. Vacant, soulless. The team opened fire in controlled bursts, the sharp reports of our rifles breaking the eerie silence. The figures stumbled, but kept advancing, seemingly impervious to pain. "Brooks! Davis! Break right! Flank them!" I ordered, dropping one of the assailants with a well-placed shot to the head. We fought in tight coordination, years of training and combat experience guiding our actions. But for every figure that fell, another seemed to take its place. "Retreat! Move!" I shouted, realizing we were being overrun. We needed to regroup, reassess. We fell back to the entrance, covering each other's movements with disciplined fire. As we neared the exit, a deafening roar shook the facility, dust and debris raining from the ceiling. "What the hell was that?" Lee shouted, his voice barely audible over the din. "No time. Keep moving," I urged, as we burst out of the facility into the relative safety of the clearing. Once outside, we kept our weapons trained on the entrance, but Nothing followed. The forest around us was deathly still, as if holding its breath. "Everyone sound off," I commanded, checking for injuries. "Green," came the responses, one after another. "We need to move out, now. This place is compromised," I said, the urgency clear in my voice. "Double time back to the FOB." We set off at a brisk pace, the facility receding into the distance. But the feeling of being watched lingered, a predator lurking just out of sight. As we trekked back, I couldn't shake the unease that gripped me. Those figures, the roar, the sense of being hunted. It was all wrong. This wasn't just a quarantine zone, it was a hunting ground, and we were the prey. Back at the FOB, we fortified our position, every sound in the night now a potential threat. The true nature of our enemy was still a mystery, but one thing was clear. We were in a fight for our lives. And in this forgotten corner of the world, we were the only ones standing between the unknown and the outside world. Nightfall enveloped our forward operating base with a tense silence, the kind that precedes a storm. We were on edge, the ambush at the facility still fresh in our minds. Those things, whatever they were, challenged everything we knew about combat and survival. "Cap, you need to see this," Lee called out, his voice strained. He was hunched over his laptop, satellite images and intercepted communications scattered across the screen. I approached, feeling a knot of apprehension in my stomach. "What's up, Lee?" "Look at these comms patterns and satellite movements," he pointed out, his finger tracing lines on the screen. "There's a lot of activity around our zone, more than just standard monitoring. It's like they're herding something, or someone." "Herding us, you mean?" I asked, the implication hitting me like a punch to the gut. "It looks that way, Cap," Lee confirmed, his eyes meeting mine, a mix of anger and disbelief. The revelation stung. "Motherfuckers," Davis spat, slamming his fist against the table. "They sent us in here blind, knowing damn well what we might be up against." "Let's not jump to conclusions," I cautioned, though my own sense of betrayal was growing. "We need more intel. Lee, keep digging. The rest of you, stay sharp. We may need to move quickly." As Lee continued to analyze the data, a chilling picture began to emerge. "Cap, Command is hailing us," Brooks reported, her voice tinged with skepticism. "Patch them through," I said, steeling myself for the conversation. "Ranger Lead, this is Command. Report your status. Over." "We're green, Command. But we need to talk about what's really going on in this zone," I replied, my voice firm. There was a pause on the other end, a moment of hesitation. "Ranger Lead, your mission is to gather intel and report back. Do not engage with any entities unless absolutely necessary. Over." "That's not good enough, Command. We were ambushed at the facility. We need to know what we're dealing with here," I pressed, my frustration mounting. "Ranger Lead, maintain your position. Further instructions will follow. Command out." The line went dead, leaving us in a heavier silence than before. "We can't trust Command," Davis said, voicing what we were all thinking. "We're on our own out here." "Looks like it," I acknowledged, feeling a heavy responsibility for my team. "We need a plan. Lee, anything else on those comms?" "Nothing yet, Cap. But I'll keep digging," he replied, turning back to his laptop. We spent the rest of the night in uneasy vigilance, every creak and rustle outside sending us to high alert. As dawn broke, we gathered for a quick briefing. "We're not sitting ducks," I started, looking each of my team members in the eye. "We keep gathering intel, but we also look for a way out. We're Rangers, and we look out for each other." Nods of agreement met my words, a silent pact forming between us. We were more than a team. We were a family, and we would face this unknown enemy together on our terms. Under the morning light filtering through the dense foliage, we prepared to delve deeper into the secrets of the quarantine zone. Tension hung thick in the air. Lee's discovery had set a new course for our mission. "Cap, over here," Lee beckoned. his voice taut with urgency. His laptop screen displayed a series of intercepted transmissions, all pointing towards a mysterious entity known as the Anomaly. "It's not just any entity, Cap," Lee explained, pointing to the decrypted texts. "They've been tracking it, studying it. It's the heart of the quarantine zone." A deep sense of betrayal mixed with a growing determination settled within me. As we approached a secluded glade, the air seemed to thicken, charged with an inexplicable energy. The ground bore strange, deep gashes, as if clawed by massive talons. Our steps were cautious, deliberate. Without warning, the earth vibrated under our feet, a low rumble escalating into a thunderous quake. From the tangled underbrush, a monstrous form emerged. It was the Anomaly, a terrifying creature of flesh and nightmare. Standing at least 15 feet tall, its skin was a mottled, sickly green, covered in pulsating veins and oozing sores. Its head was elongated, devoid of eyes, with a gaping maw lined with rows of razor-sharp teeth, dripping with a viscous, dark saliva. Its limbs were disproportionate, one arm grotesquely larger than the other, ending in twisted, clawed appendages. We opened fire, but the creature's thick hide seemed impervious to our bullets. It let out a deafening screech, a sound so primal and horrifying that it shook us to our core. In a flash, the Anomaly charged, its movements a grotesque display of power and agility. We scattered, firing in desperation as the creature swiped with its massive claws, uprooting trees and sending debris flying. "Fall back!" I yelled, realizing the hopelessness of our assault. We retreated in disarray, the Anomaly in relentless pursuit. Its screeches echoed through the forest. Breathless and shaken, we barely made it back to the FOB. The Anomaly ceased its pursuit as mysteriously as it had appeared, melting back into the forest. Gasping for air, Davis looked at me, his face etched with fear and disbelief. "Cap? What the hell is that thing?" "I don't know," I replied, my mind racing. "But Command does, and they sent us here to face it." The early hours of the morning found us huddled in a makeshift war room, our FOB transformed into a fortress of vigilance. The Anomaly's attack had left us with more questions than answers, and a palpable sense of dread hung over us. "We can't stay here," I asserted, looking at the weary but resolute faces of my team. "We either find a way to neutralize this thing, or we find an exit strategy." "Cap, I've got eyes on the whole perimeter," Ramirez's voice crackled over the comms, his position high in a camouflage sniper's nest, giving him an eagle-eyed view of our surroundings. "Good. Keep us updated. We move at first light," I replied. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, we set out, our gear packed for mobility. The plan was twofold: gather more intel on the Anomaly and find a route out of this damned zone. Navigating the thick underbrush, we kept a tight formation, our senses on high alert. The forest felt alive, watching us with an unseen, malevolent gaze. "Movement. Northeast of your position," Ramirez reported, his voice tense. "Looks like those things again. Heading your way." "Copy that, Ramirez. Keep them in your sights," I responded. "Team, defensive positions. We might have company." We quickly found cover, our weapons trained on the approaching threat. The creatures from the facility, their vacant eyes and erratic movements, emerged from the trees, their numbers greater than before. The first shot rang out from Ramirez's sniper rifle, the sound echoing through the forest. One of the creatures fell, a clean shot through the head. "They're flanking us," Lee warned, opening fire alongside Davis and Brooks. The firefight was intense, our team a well-oiled machine of trained reflexes and tactical prowess. The creatures were relentless, but Ramirez's precision from above provided us with a critical advantage. His shots methodical and deadly. We advanced cautiously, using the cover of the trees to our advantage. The creatures, despite their numbers, were no match for our coordinated assault. Suddenly, a deafening roar cut through the chaos. The Anomaly had returned, its monstrous form barreling through the trees. Fall back, I commanded. Ramirez, cover us. We retreated, the anomaly in hot pursuit. It screeches a terrifying symphony of rage. Bullets seem to only enrage it further. Heading to your position, Ramirez. Prepare for close engagement, I yelled into the comms. The anomaly was closing in, its massive form a blur of fury. We reached Ramirez's position, his sniper rifle now useless at close range. Switching to CQC, Ramirez said, drawing his sidearm. The creature was upon us, its claws swiping with deadly precision. We dove and rolled, firing at any weak points we could find. It seemed impervious, unstoppable. In a desperate move, Davis lobbed a grenade at the creature. The explosion rocked the forest, sending a cloud of debris into the air. For a moment, the world was silent, save for the ringing in our ears. The anomaly lay motionless, its body finally succumbing to the onslaught. Panting and bruised, we regrouped, the threat momentarily neutralized. "We can't keep this up," Brooks said, her voice heavy with fatigue. "We won't have to," I replied, determination stealing my voice. "We're finding a way out. We're going home." As we quickly regrouped, I grabbed the radio, my voice cutting through the static. "This is Ranger Lead calling for immediate extraction. We're hot. Repeat, we're hot. LZ coordinates coming your way." "Copy. Ranger Lead. Extraction bird en route. ETA 5 minutes. Hold your position," came the response, crackling with urgency. 5 minutes, I relayed to the team. "We hold this ground until our ride is here. Let's make every shot count." We formed a tight perimeter, each of us covering a sector. The forest around us seemed to come alive with movement as more of those creatures emerged, drawn by the chaos of our battle with the anomaly. Ramirez, perched above, provided overwatch. "Targets incoming from all sides. I'll give you as much cover as I can." The first creature burst through the underbrush, and a barrage of gunfire from Lee and Davis cut it down. More followed, a relentless tide of twisted forms and snarling faces. 2 minutes out, Ranger Lead," crackled the radio. The thumping sound of the rotor blades began to fill the air, a symphony of hope amidst the cacophony of battle. A creature lunged at Brooks, who deftly sidestepped and delivered a fatal shot. "They're not letting up," she shouted, reloading swiftly. "Stay focused, our ride's almost here," I called out, dropping another creature with a burst of fire. The sound of the approaching helicopter grew louder, its searchlights cutting through the twilight, casting long, ominous shadows amongst the trees. The creatures hesitated, momentarily disoriented by the bright lights and noise. "There's our ticket out," I yelled. "Move!" We broke cover, sprinting toward the clearing where the helicopter hovered just above the ground, its side door open and a crewman signaling us aboard. Ramirez provided covering fire as we boarded the helicopter, the creatures surging towards us in a last, frenzied assault. Bullets whizzed by as we returned fire, the helicopter's crew joining in with their mounted machine guns. "Everyone's aboard! Go, go, go!" I shouted over the din. The helicopter lifted off, the ground below receding as we rose into the sky. We watched as the creatures faded into the darkness of the forest, the nightmare of the quarantine zone. Exhausted, we slumped against the walls of the helicopter, the adrenaline slowly ebbing from our veins. We had survived the impossible, but the fight was far from over.